Hey everybody, I am back again with Nick from PandaMonium Reviews. How you doing, man?
Pretty good, Bob. How about you?
Excellent. I absolutely had to talk to you after watching that Sega Rally documentary because I saw the one on Virtua Cop and I loved it, and I thought that was so cool. And I don't mean this in a negative way, but I was just like, man, that's awesome. I'm looking forward to the rest of the games, but how's he ever going to top that? And you may have.
I'm really happy with how the rally video turned out. I still don't know if I topped Virtua Cop, but I mean, I guess the two videos are very different from each other as far as what's in them and what they cover, but both definitely got really meaty and both surpassed 4 hours, which, for
Yeah.
better or for worse, but yeah.
So I have to ask, and I'll just politely give an aside. I did another interview with Nick before. If you want to hear his background and all the fun stuff we talked about last time, I strongly recommend listening to that too. We'll probably touch a little bit on that, but I just want to dive directly into it. And the first question I have is, I I, I guess it's half question, half statement. I think if I went into something knowing that it was going to be a 4 hour plus documentary, I don't know if I would be able to handle that. How do you go in to something so massive and just not get overwhelmed?
Well, it helps that I enjoy doing it. I like editing. A lot of people who do this say that the editing phase is their least favorite part of it. For me, it's kind of the opposite. I have the most fun putting it together and seeing it all come together on the timeline. And there's often stuff that gets added or taken out of the script, kind of. I don't want to say impromptu, but like while editing, you see things come together, and you're like, "Man, it'd be great if I put this here," or "Man, it'd be really funny if I put this meme here." I didn't know it was going to be 4.5 hours when I started it, and I think that's the case with any video I've made that went more than 1 hour in length. I went into the rally video after finding all the source material I knew I wanted to use. I went into the script writing thinking, all right, I don't want this to be more than 2 hours.
That's
If
funny.
it gets to that point, it's gone too far. And then after I finished writing the script, using my bad script math, and I say bad because it failed me here. Once the script was done, I figured by how many pages it was that it would be like between 3 and 3.5 hours, and it would not go past 3.5 hours. And then once it all kind of got on the timeline, it just sort of unraveled. Like, oh no, this is going to be a little more than that. But
Yeah. Well, I
yeah,
mean, I gotta
yeah,
say though, this does not feel like a 4 hour and 40-minute documentary at all.
nice. It's good to
And in
hear.
fact, if you had chopped this up, which doesn't work for YouTube, but I'm just saying, like, if you had chopped this up into a couple of bits, this would absolutely feel like a Netflix docuseries with one massive, massive difference. Every Netflix docuseries I've watched in the past 5 years repeats the same shit over and over and over, most likely to
Right.
compensate for the fact that most people are playing on their phones, half paying attention. And you don't do that. You don't insult the audience by just saying the same stuff over. Now, obviously, there are some points that always need to be repeated, and there's some callbacks, and that stuff
Yeah.
is just part of the flow of it. But you don't do that cheap crap that a lot of those other documentaries do. This is just like a really great docu series, and I recommend that if this time span is intimidating, treat it like a docu series. If not, I mean, most people these days have the ability to just go, all right, so I'll just watch it in chunks. I'll just watch it till I get tired and finish up the next day. But if your brain doesn't work that way, visualize it as a docu series, set 40-minute increments or whatever, and just watch it like that.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate hearing that. And I definitely have noticed that other, like on Netflix docuseries is like that. Definitely do repeat stuff every now and then. I think they might be doing it just to compensate for the fact that people might be watching the episodes like far apart from each other, like in their lives, as opposed to like binging it all in one sitting. So they might feel like they need to repeat stuff to remind people of what's going on. But some of them get like really excessive with that. I've definitely noticed that before. So
Yeah, I actually saw this trend starting in TV documentary style stuff where you
yeah,
go to commercial and you come back, and the first 2 minutes after you come back from commercial is the same thing that you just saw.
Right. It's like
So
recapping what you
yeah, so
just
it's
saw like
almost
minutes
like,
ago.
okay, so what they had was a bunch of 30-minute episodes, and somebody said, "No, no, no, we gotta make them 45." So it's, "All right, well, let's just copy and paste the script a couple times, and here we go, 45 minutes." So,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I try to avoid that.
yeah, you absolutely did. The other thing that stood out, and we'll bounce around at first, and I'm sure we'll find topics to stick in on, but the
Oh,
other
sure.
thing
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
really, really stuck out is that you have brand new interviews with people. So,
Yes.
how did you get in touch with these different folks? I know, how were they? Yeah, how did they react to you wanting to do a documentary? Like, could you just tell us the behind the scenes of that stuff?
Sure. So Ken Ibrahim, the guy who voices over the Navigator, he was the first person I reached out to just because I had been following him on Twitter for a while, and he's pretty active online. So I reached out to him first, and he responded quickly and immediately agreed to do it. He had done. He also did an interview with, I think it was the Time Extension podcast. He talked with them too,
Mm,
and in general is just responsive to the Sega community and to people asking him questions about Rally. He remembers his time at Sega fondly. He loves reflecting on it. So he was good to work with, really pleasant to speak with, and very professional too. You can tell he's um, been in the industry that he's been in for a very long time. So yeah, very very good dude. And remembered quite a lot from what happened back then, his time at Sega, specific stories. So that was really nice. And I didn't even ask him to like a lot of people who do roles like his. People might ask them, say the line, and maybe they get annoyed by it. I never asked him at any point, but he yelled finish at the end and repeated a lot of the lines that he spoke in Sega Rally throughout the interview. I didn't even have to ask him; he just did it like on the fly. So you can tell he
that's really
really
cool.
he really liked that role. He enjoyed it and he likes talking about it. So that was great.
That's a real
I
Tim Kitzrow thing to do. That's cool.
Yes, yeah, exactly. I think he and Tim Kitzrow would probably get along. Um,
Yeah.
uh, I tried reaching out to a bunch of the other devs, and the issue that we often run into, especially with devs from Japan, is a lot of them are very difficult to contact. And that's a lot of it has to do with just not being a native Japanese speaker or being from there, not knowing the correct social avenues to find these people. Um, Many of them I just couldn't find at all. Like I couldn't find any business emails or social media accounts or anything like that. And with that, it's like you can try typing their names in Romaji or try their kanji names and searching those. Sometimes it comes up with stuff. Sometimes they're just not around online today. So that was tough. I tried getting Tetsuya Mizuguchi because he speaks very fluent English. He politely declined twice to
Hmm.
be interviewed for the video. And you might notice he doesn't really do interviews about his time at Sega at all. Like he certainly spoke about Sega while he was still working there, and sometimes he does like guest appearances at like events and conferences and stuff. And people might ask him a couple questions about Rally or about Space Channel 5, and he'll like touch on it briefly, but he always ends with the cliff note of, but I don't like to talk about the past. I like to focus on the next big challenge, what's going on in the future. He just generally doesn't seem to like reflecting on the past at all. And he says that a lot in the interviews and conferences that he's gone to and stuff. So that's probably why he said no, which is totally fine. He's already done a wealth of other interviews in the past. There was a bunch of other source material with him that covered Rally.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
totally understandable too.
exactly.
I get it. It nobody wants to be that nostalgia act, People wanna be
Mhm.
known for what they're doing, not what they did, and,
Yes, that's kind of the attitude that he carries for sure. So,
the language barrier is also gonna be difficult because I get 15 emails a day from, like, "Hi, I'm insert name here from," whatever. "Would you like to do this or that?" And I basically read the subject and the first line and delete and block because I'm like, "Spam, spam, spam." And at least one of those had to have been real, had to have been, and so
right,
I could
exactly.
imagine in another language, You know, you have some some American messaging you in English. It's like, get out of here! I don't want your scam. Are you kidding?
Right. Yeah, exactly. Um, I'm not sure if that was the case here, but I'm sure that definitely happened before with other people that tried reaching out to.
Yeah.
Uh, Yoshio Fujimoto was interesting because I did initially reach out to him in the first like wide net of emails and messages sent out to people. I found Tane's business contact and emailed that and never heard back from it. So sometime after having the script like mostly written, I found his Facebook page and on a whim, Facebook DM'd him. This happened like earlier this year, and I think it was March. And
Oh wow.
he after never hearing back from his business email, he immediately responded back on Facebook DM and was like, "Yeah, I'll do it. What day works best? I'm going to Kenya, so it's got to be after. But like, yeah, I'll talk to you about this."
That is
It's
so
like,
cool. It
okay.
actually worked out that you get to talk to him after Kenya because that was a fun little bit that you added in there.
Yes, the timing was great. Yeah, I couldn't have asked for better timing to speak with him. And yeah, he was great.
Did you
Joy to
ever
speak
ask if he got your business email?
with. No, he never did.
I wouldn't have either. I wouldn't have wanted to put that pressure. I would have just been happy that he did the interview. So
Exactly. Yeah, that was just it. So it was good to get him, and yeah, he was happy to talk about it. Um, Definitely happy to talk about his time at the Safari Rally and taking the Sega devs out to that. It was the '95 Indonesia Rally that he brought them out to, and his contributions to Rally and what his career's been like today. Like he was super psyched to be talking about that with somebody. So that was cool. He was great.
yeah.
So a lot of funny things too. Like there was one point, it's in the video, it's in the rally video. He's talking about the importance of having helicopters up there to keep an eye on what's ahead of the drivers on the road. And he said, if another car is coming, we're going to die.
Yeah.
Like actually, like he's not like wrong, but like yeah, he was very upfront with stuff like that. He said a lot of stuff that was like, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. So
Yeah, he
yeah,
was a
he was
great
great.
addition. What was that, green screen background that he had? Was that his current sponsor or something?
He started the company Tane. That was his company,
Oh,
Tane.
cool.
Yeah. So yeah, in the documentary, he talks about resigning from the company he started working at after university, so that he could start his own company to give himself more time to race in rallies and fund his rally career, and that was Tane. Um, I didn't know how like popular Tane was when I talked to him. Like I knew they're a pretty significant motorsports company, automobile parts and stuff, selling shocks to a variety of different types of racers and other customers. But like the live chat and the live premiere like lit up when they saw that he was the Tane guy. They're like, "Oh my God, Tane! I know Tane. Like this is one of the best shocks companies in the world." And I'm like, "Oh, okay. I didn't I didn't realize it was that significant." So
That's
um,
very cool.
definitely expanded a lot. He's opened up a lot more like facilities and factories out throughout Asia. I think he just opened up a shop in Thailand. I think.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Man, it's so nice to see, people who've done awesome things in their youth continue to kick ass as they get older.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. It's awesome. Yeah.
That's very
He definitely hasn't slowed that down.
So, when you start something this massive, like what's the first couple of steps? Do you just make a list of all the developers from a game and just try to track them down and email them? Like, what? How do you even approach something like this?
Definitely like trying to find contact info for as many of the devs as possible, either through just the game's credits or looking up the game on like Moby Games websites like that. Um, and that paired with trying to get as much source material as I can about the game, the history of the company, looking at what other games the devs made in the past as kind of an indicator of what might have helped them along the way. Um, Digging through archived websites from the time. That can get pretty laborious because you can't just Google that stuff. You just have to go through the right avenues and hope you find something good. going through old magazines, going and for this one going through old Japanese magazines. What's nice about games made in Japan in the '90s Japanese magazines were very robust as far as interviewing game devs during development, tracking active development of games. They really archived a lot of information that Western gaming journalists just did not do during the '90s, not nearly to the extent that they did in Japan. And all that stuff, like the vast majority, is all scanned and preserved online. There's still some unscanned material, but it's gradually getting added. That stuff's been extremely useful for this series. We're fortunate that they were, you know, that active back then. They saved a lot of stories from going extinct, I guess. Um,
Yeah, and that was certainly
yeah.
one of the things I noticed, and I don't know why, but it stuck out more in this documentary, or maybe I just wasn't looking for it in the older one, so I'm sorry if it already was
No,
there,
it's
but
yeah.
the detail in the '90s Japanese magazines and how deep they went into of how the games were made, the frame rates, the technical details matched what we do today, which is not what I
Right.
remember, but I was also a kid, but it's not what I remember reading as detailed in American magazines. So it does seem to actually trend that way, right? The US magazines back in the '90s didn't go as technical and deep as the Japanese ones.
Exactly. You're no, you're right about that completely. Though the American and European magazines would for sure interview devs occasionally, but not nearly as in depth as they did in Japan. Like they were very in depth and surprisingly pretty honest too about where they were at and if they think they can meet deadline and stuff like pressures and whatnot. Um, One
Do
thing I
you think
noticed
it's
that
fair
was
to
go
say
ahead.
that a vibe of the US magazines was more about me? This is my review, my opinion, our magazine's testing, and the Japanese was very much the game, the devs, the software, the performance. Is that do you think that theme carries through a lot of the '90s magazines, or was that just the vibe I got from this particular episode?
To some extent, that's what the vibe is like for the most part. I think that in the world of Western gaming magazines, Next Gen was probably more on the journalistic side than magazines like GamePro and EGM. But GamePro, EGM, and those other shops that were probably more heavy into reviews and more heavy into column pieces still occasionally did interviews and did like actual games journalism.
Hmm.
The Japanese magazines had a very good amount of both. They were very thick. Like some of these issues would run like 150 pages or so,
Oh wow.
and they would have a giant amount of dev interviews, of previews for games that are coming up, but also still have like reviews and column pieces and such, depending on what magazine it is, right? Like any Western magazine. But I think in the like overall, the Japanese '90s gaming magazine scene had a lot more of actual journalism going on than a lot of the Western magazines did. Um, and again, some are better than others in the West as far as like having journalistic content. But yeah, I think the culture between the two sides was definitely, um, yeah, kind of your impression. I think is just about on point.
Hmm. Um, I'm just trying to think. It's such a long documentary, and I had so many questions. And I don't, a lot of people get annoyed because I don't take notes before these interviews because
Sure.
I don't like that. Um, I like the flow of having a conversation, and also if I research a little too much, then I accidentally do that thing where I assume the audience already knows what I know. So by going in blind and asking the questions, very often they're stupid questions that bring everybody up to speed that end up not being so stupid. So
Right,
sorry
right,
for the
right,
long
exactly.
pauses here, but
No, you're good. You're good.
um, obviously, also this is coming from extreme enthusiasm for this, so
Right on.
hopefully you're you're taking it that way. But
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm glad you liked it. I enjoyed the picture of you watching it with the beer in the backyard. I thought that was nice.
oh, that was so cool. That
I
was
always
just
enjoy anyone sending me or posting a picture of how they're watching the stuff that I make. You get a lot of fun stuff. There's a guy in New York that like will play them in his game shop, and other folks just having their big retro game set up with my video like in the middle of it. I'm like, oh hell yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
So
Funny you say that because there's a good chance somebody might walk into Brooklyn Video Games and this will be playing and or your documentary would be playing. So,
nice. Hell yeah.
um, so overall for Sega Rally, I remember Daytona, and my memories, of course, are just the Northeast in the area that I lived in
Yeah.
because, although the internet was there, it was not like today. You're not able to instantly communicate videos with people, so I didn't know the vibe of every other place. But when Daytona was released, that was massive. Here's this four-player game that you can go to the mall and race against three of your friends, and you basically immediately figure out how to drive, especially on the beginner course, with
Hmm.
really only that one turn being something that you have to kind of figure out and experiment with. And when I first played Sega Rally, it immediately felt like there was going to be a learning curve to it. You couldn't just complete a lap without crashing right away or spinning out or something. Basically,
Right.
it was a harder game, but I definitely remember liking it too. So while all of the reviews were super positive for Rally, um, I remember at towards the end of the documentary, you were talking about sales numbers and how many were sold to stores versus how many were sold to customers, and it was definitely less than Daytona, right?
Yeah, way less. At least in the American side, in North America,
Yeah.
way less than Daytona.
I wonder, do you think it was the learning curve? Do you think it's because they didn't get across to people that this is a game that you sit with for a while and enjoy over time?
I think it was twofold. I think that's certainly got to be part of it. And I think the other end of it was just Rally's popularity in North America is not what it was in Europe. Still to this day, it's way, way, way more popular in Europe than it is in North America. Um, the learning curve, I think, has something to do with it because Daytona is definitely a game, like you said, you can sit down and like complete a race on your first try without timing out. Even if you crash a few times, even if you get like 20th place or something like that. Like that is a game you can reasonably pick up and play. Whereas Sega Rally, the championship mode, like the default arcade mode in that game, a first timer will not get to the end
Right.
unless they're just super good at it naturally for some reason, and have some kind of you know what's it, Mary Sue? Is that what the TV term is? Like just have this natural skill at rally out of nowhere.
Hmm.
Um, Most people playing it for the first time just will not get to the end on their first go. It'll take a number of times before you can even get to the finish, and then even more times to get first place, and then the skill to grind down your times and whatnot. So that might have been a turnoff for some people. Um, but in North America, I think Daytona is selling more than Rally. Of course, you have NASCAR being way more popular than Rally in North America, especially in the 90s. That probably had a lot to do with it. Daytona in general was just really popular. Like it was a hit in the arcades all over the world, especially in the States. Um, and the other issue, I think, is that by the time Rally came out, that was late 1995. And
Mm.
that was kind of already when, like, it came out when the PlayStation had launched and started sharply outdoing Saturn as far as the sales numbers go. There was just a sharply declining interest in the Saturn by the time Rally came out, combined with the fact that Daytona and NASCAR are more popular, um,
Yeah.
and the skill ceiling being higher. I think there were just a lot of things working against Rally, despite it looking way better than Saturn on Daytona, having a higher frame rate, better graphics, better looking car models. Um, it just that wasn't enough to convince American buyers, at least with the marketing efforts they had, that they should be getting Rally over Daytona. It just didn't work. So yeah, I think that's
Yeah, I
kind of
mean,
a
I think you
combination of
nailed
those
it. I
things.
think it was the unperfect storm of timing for that
Yeah,
because,
yeah, exactly.
you have one generation of gamers who maybe they just started playing Daytona, even though it came out before that. Maybe they just started playing it and Rally comes out and they love Daytona, and it's like, I was the little poor kid. I couldn't just sit there and play games all day. I had to very carefully choose where I was going to spend my quarters. And
Right, exactly.
well,
Yeah,
yeah, well, I did try Rally. It was like that's much harder, and I already love this game, so that's where my quarters are going to go. And then you have the slightly younger generation coming in seeing that, but they probably already saved up their money for a PlayStation. So that's
Yeah,
when you
right.
started to lose arcade gamers for stuff like that. So yeah, it sucks that that game didn't get the US recognition that it deserved, because it certainly is
Absolutely.
an interesting game.
And worldwide, it did extremely well. It was, the top selling game in Europe for quite some time, and certainly did really well in Japan. It just, they weren't able to get that spark in the U.S. And the sick, twisted part of this is they rushed an early, incomplete version of Sega Rally to North America to like get it out in time for the holiday season, even though the game wasn't done. It was that 98% version because they're like, oh, we got to get this out in time for the holiday season. It's going to be a system seller. We're going to really get this game under the Christmas trees. Let's go, and that did not work. They
So that
rushed it
was
out and it
actually one of
failed.
the things that I absolutely wanted to ask you. So you've
Yeah.
obviously played a lot of Rally and, in preparation for doing
Oh
this,
yes, I played a lot.
so if somebody hasn't, like, so, let's go back in time to the '90s when this was released. If you were
Mhm.
a kid who was decently good at gaming, not just completely sucked like I did for most of the games that I played, and you sat down and you played 98% done US Rally, and you played it for, a night, let's just say, or a
Yeah.
weekend, and then the next weekend rolls around and somebody drops the 100% version in front of you and you're playing that, would you immediately be like, "Oh, wow, this is so much better. Everything's fixed," or is it really just the smaller details that you wouldn't notice right away?
It's minimal. It's definitely minimal. Like once you like really examine what the differences are, they stick out like a sore thumb. But if you're just casually playing the two versions side by side, you're probably not going to notice the differences unless you're just an absolute nut about Sega Rally Championship.
Hmm.
Like the most obvious thing is the rock face in the forest track being gone in the 98% version. There's other small details like the Toyota logo on the back of the Celica
The
not
red
being
logo,
present.
yeah.
Yeah, it's gone. Um, Audience members are not moving at all. They don't jump around. There's fewer of them. They're just static. There are more time trial ghosts in the complete version, whereas in the 98% version, there's just the one. And it is believed, and I don't know if there's definitive proof of this, but the Rally devs kept saying that they tweaked the D-pad steering throughout the entire development process. So it's believed that the 100% Japanese/European version might have slightly better D-pad steering than the 98% version. I played a lot of all of the versions and didn't notice a significant difference in the D-pad steering.
Hmm.
Um, I did notice a big difference in the D-pad steering when playing Sega Rally Plus, which was the Japanese exclusive enhanced version of Sega Rally. That did
So
come to North America technically, but it came out to us as the Sega Rally Netlink version. Like I want to say that was 1997 when that came out.
is that the version Saturn owners should be playing then? The Netlink version if you're playing on a US Saturn, or the Plus if you're
Uh, I would say that if you the 98% version is close enough to where you're not going to feel like you're missing much. But if you want to know that you have the complete experience, you should either get the plus version if you can. That's the most complete version. Or if for some reason you can't find it, just the Japanese vanilla Rally. US Netlink version is basically Sega Rally Plus, so that works just fine too if you want the most complete experience. And then you can also play it online with someone if you've got the equipment. So
hmm.
but yeah, the 98% version, like you, if you play that today, you'll be fine. You'll get by. But once you really get into it, you'll start to notice the differences, and you'll be wanting the more complete rally. So
So it does actually sound like in hindsight Sega made the right decision though.
I guess it's just it didn't work. Like it was a good idea to try to get that out before the holidays, but it didn't work. They didn't sell as many copies as they wanted to, or as many as they should have. Um,
Yeah,
Perhaps they wouldn't have sold as many if they did wait, but I don't think they got the spark they were wanting. They wanted Rally to be part of the efforts to bring Saturn back into the spotlight in time for the 1995 holiday season, and it just did not do it.
The one thing that definitely struck me, and once again, I'm trying to remember back when I was a kid, and back at that point, I think I was old enough so this wouldn't have applied. But if I was, I definitely remember like when I was 10, 11, 12, if I wanted something that expensive, like if this was something like, hey, I want a new game console, that's something I would have had to have started talking about in the summer.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
if Rally is
I remember
released in
this.
November, there's no chance that I was gonna get, I mean, 0 chance I would get a Saturn and Rally for the holiday season that year. And also, even if I already had a Saturn, there's an incredibly small chance that that late I could have told my parents, like, "Hey, this is what I want," that you're probably gonna have to hunt down in the next 2 weeks or something.
Right, yeah,
So,
like, was it a week before Black Friday? Like, yeah, that timeline doesn't work.
yeah. So, I wonder how that would have all played out, but those are always interesting things to ponder. But I mean, I think the bottom line is the US market didn't get screwed. It's not like we got the 75% version. So,
Exactly, yeah, it wasn't like we got the leaked prototype version with the crappier car models and everything, yeah.
right, right, right.
That would
So
have been
you were actually you acquired those prototypes and were playing them throughout the documentary, so you would actually see the different transitions between, you know, uh, the game being completed, right?
Yeah, so the 75% prototype, anyone can go on Hidden Palace and download and play it right now. That was how I did it. It'll run on an original Saturn if you load the right file, and it'll be like you playing Sega Rally at that point in time, like a little time machine, a time capsule for what it was like at that stage. Um, and that was part of the effort to get a timeline of source material put together that formed the outline of the script. One of the key things that I did after gathering all the pieces of source material, the footage on demo discs throughout 1995, the demo builds, that prototype build, magazine articles, the interviews and stuff in those magazine articles. I had everything laid out in a timeline on, an outline timeline saying, okay, so this interview they say they conducted this interview at this point in October, which was right before this 75% version was built, and which was right before this demo disc that had this footage of the game. So I had a timeline of the showing the progression of Sega Rally throughout that year, and then I kind of wrote the script around that,
Hmm.
if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, writing a 4 hour and 40-minute script does not make sense to me, but so starting that off certainly does. So,
Right. That shouldn't make sense to anybody.
so
Making it that freakishly long, yeah.
yeah, so when you have all this stuff, then so do you start by finding all of these old interviews, saving them in your computer, labeling them because that's always super important. It's a mistake
Yep.
I don't make anymore, and then you write the script based on, okay, well, here's a timeline, here's the interviews I want to put in, and you basically just absorb all of this information and start chronologically and then go from there. Is that how you would do that?
Pretty much, yeah. With any video that has a wealth of source material like that, that seems to be the best way to go about writing these, at least for me. Just get the timeline put together of when things happened, and then write around it. But also find ways to weave in like my impressions of the game. The whenever I play one of these games, while I'm like recording the footage and playing it for the first time, I try to make sure I take notes like while I'm playing it, so that I have like my immediate impressions down.
Mm,
Um, so that way, when I go and do the actual like review portion of the review, then I remember. Oh yeah, so in this video clip, this is what was going through my mind. This is how everything felt, how the steering felt, um, and then kind of write it through that way. Um, but yeah, getting the source material together, like getting it all saved, finding as much as I can, consuming as much of the pre-existing stuff on the game as possible, and then using all that to form an outline and then write around the outline. Yeah, that's usually how I wind up doing it.
mm. What video editing software are you using?
Premiere.
Yeah, same here. Do you have any tricks of how to keep uh an accounting of where everything is? Do you use any of the features there, or do you basically just have like a spreadsheet where you have times and stuff?
Um, so I just kind of like all the organization stuff sort of happens in the script document. Everything that I save and use for the video all goes in the same folder so that Premiere doesn't lose anything. I
Hmm.
don't I don't want to have a million folder paths for the Premiere project to look after because it tends to lose stuff if you do that.
Mm.
And then folder organization, I guess, as much as I can. You know, a lot of it's like in the moment folder organization. So if you were to go and look at it now, you'd be like, "Oh my God, Nick, where the hell did you put everything?" But it's organized chaos, I guess. But it's all contained in the same folder, so that way Premiere doesn't lose anything.
So
All the
one
footage that I record goes in its own folder, and I also back up all of my previous projects and all the source files for them, the folders that I had for them on an external drive, so that if there's something I need from a previous episode, I can very easily go and pull from it there.
Yeah, that's always a good trick. I
Yeah,
have, a drive I have, like, a 22 terabyte drive in my PC, and, then I have, like, a 1 terabyte SSD NVMe drive that I that's, like, my working drive, but I still pull,
yeah.
older footage all the time. And, sometimes it's tricky because you move folders around. I try not to, but, sometimes you rename stuff or, but, yeah, generally that kinda works.
Mm-hmm.
One issue I always have with Premiere, and I must have thought this. I almost texted you this because I thought about it so many times watching this, but I'll do like that, Tink VHS video I put out. I worked on that for so long, and it was, quote, unquote, "done," like, 3 times. And, whenever I'm done at the end of a video, I still have notes of things that, were mistakes, but, like, nobody in the planet would notice those but me. So I'm just like,
Right.
okay, leave them. But I also would find like all the time text will just shift to the right. And I've never figured out how to do it. I've never been able to recreate it. But so I'll go in and I'll see if, and I'll watch a complete 30-minute video and I'll go, ah crap, I reversed the footage here. I have to fix that. That's a mistake. So I'll open up Premiere, I'll swap the footage, and that's it. I won't touch anything else other than that, and then I'll go back and watch it again, and all the text will be shifted over, or random letters are added to the end of text, or certain assets are moved that in sections of the video that I didn't even go near. So, but
Oh,
what
weird.
I kept thinking of is, does that ever happen to you? And then also, when if stuff like that happens, you gotta sit down and watch a 4 hour and 40-minute video from start to finish again to make sure nothing else happened? Like, is that stuff
So
happen?
here's a trick that I do to avoid that. To avoid the 4 hour timeline problem. I every chapter is in its own sequence.
Okay,
So each chapter is in its own editing timeline. And then when I export, I just go to my primary timeline. Each sequence is in your project bin, and you can drag those into a timeline as a nested sequence that
right.
pops up in lime green. And so I put them all in order and export whenever I got to export anything. But all the chapters are in their own individual timeline. I keep everything on the timeline unlocked. I hardly ever lock, like a video track or an audio track, um, unless I, remember to unlock it after I'm done adjusting something. If you accidentally leave one of those locked and you start messing with stuff and ripple deleting, that's when stuff's going to get messy. And one other thing is to make sure that I set the resolution of the timeline to where I want it to, 1080p 60, and then just leave it like that. Sometimes what Premiere will do, you got to be very careful with this. Sometimes if you drag a video file into a timeline that's in a different resolution or some other different video property, it'll say, "Hey, your sequence does not, it's in a different format. It's in a different, resolution. Do you want to change it to match the clip that you're dragging in?" And it's very easy to see that dialog box appear, hit enter, and then just, forget about it. Um,
Hmm.
that'll change whatever resolution settings you have in that timeline and will thus change where everything on that timeline is placed, where the text objects are placed in your video. They'll shift to conform to whatever new resolution you just told Premiere to, convert it all to. I had that happen once during one of these videos. I don't remember which one, but it was one of the like nearly 1 hour videos where that happened, and I had to go through and move everything. I had to move all the PNG things and text files and other like weird little graphics,
Ugh.
and that was a pain. So I just I'm very careful to like not let that happen. That dialogue box can get you sometimes.
I've
That
actually never had that happen. I've seen the dialogue box, but that would only ever pop up for me the first 1 or 2 things that I drop in the timeline, and so I usually
right.
catch it like, I've made it 15 minutes into editing and gone, "Wait, why is it choppy?" And, "Oh, that's right, I've re" so but that I've never had that happen after, after really digging into work before, so that's
Yeah,
weird.
yeah.
I always have
When
the worst luck with this stuff too. I talk to John Linneman in My Life in Gaming all the time about this, and they're like, "Nope, never had that happen." Like,
right,
so,
yeah.
yeah, just
I can definitely see how that can happen, but yeah, uh, you just got to be careful with it. You just constantly be monitoring if certain things are locked or not, and where all your assets are. And yeah,
yeah.
it's just something that comes with time, I guess. Any video editing software will have little quirks like that, but
Yeah, but the thing that absolutely enrages me is if I had taken the time to learn DaVinci Resolve and it was doing that, a free program is still working great. Whereas I spend a
yeah,
lot of money on Premiere every year just to have this program never work the same way twice. It stopped. Lagarith is a file format that I use to capture video in for older video game stuff. And
hmm
for years, it worked fine. And now it won't import Lagarith files. So,
yeah. Adobe just does that. They like
yeah.
to there were certain branches of MOV files that it stopped supporting that I used to like need to work, and
Ugh,
that pissed me off. Like they do that. You're supposed to pay them $60 a year, and they do this
yeah.
crap. It's stupid.
I gotta
Um,
talk to Epos Vox and see if he could do like we'll do a live personalized training session on how to do the things that I do in Premiere and Resolve so I could get rid of that program by the time my subscription runs out next year. So
there you go.
I'll
Attaboy.
talk to Adam and see if he could I'll sign up for his paid service, his consulting and do that. We'll just do it live so I could try to teach other people as well. So cuz that is enraging when stuff like that happens.
Yeah,
Uh
yeah. It's the fun of video editing. That's the joy.
Speaking of capture, how did you get the captures for everything? You were using emulation footage, and then you were also using Saturn and PS2, correct?
Yeah, so all the arcade stuff is a combination of the M2 emulator and PS2 direct capture RGB SCART from PS2 to OSSC. The capture
So
card I'm using wasn't
let's
able to
let's back
do.
up a little bit
Yeah,
though, and we'll start with arcade. So the
yes,
M2 emulator, what do you mean by that?
there is a Model 2 arcade board emulator for Windows computers called it's just called M2 emulator, coded
Mhm,
by a guy known to the scene as L Semi. It's very good. You can run Model 2 games in MAME, but they don't work very well.
mhm.
The M2 emulator runs pretty much all of them pretty competently. I haven't had any major issues with it other than trying to map analog steering to a joypad. It doesn't like doing that very much. But as far as like game compatibility and getting it to look right and run at the right frame rate, it does that really, really well. A fun feature with it is it can take mesh transparency textures in a Model 2 game and convert them to a truly transparent texture. So it actually, for many games, enhances them. It's very good. He hasn't El Semi hasn't updated this program in quite some time. It's been a few years. Just sort of made a really good emulator, got it to near perfect, and then disappeared. And since then, there hasn't been a big effort to improve it or to try to make a better Model 2 board emulator. But yeah, it works pretty well. So that's generally anytime I'm playing a Model 2 game in these reviews and you're seeing footage of it, I'm probably capturing that 98% of the time.
That looks
So
really
yeah,
good. And how exactly do you capture that then? Do you run it in its original resolution and do a window capture in OBS?
yeah, I try to get it running in as close to the original settings as I can, and then run it in OBS or record it in OBS. Just little screen recording, nothing too crazy about that. Um, and I got to be careful because that feature I mentioned, where you can have mesh transparencies turn to real transparent textures, it enables that by default. So I have to make sure I turn that off so they actually show up as mesh transparencies, which is how they originally looked in the arcades. So
Right, right.
yeah, that's generally how I'm doing that. Yeah, that emulator is really slick. It's very good. The
I have
PS2 Ford Rally is good too, but you can't get it looking as crisp, I guess. So
Yeah, we'll get to the PS2 one in a second, but
yeah,
yeah, I'll leave a link to that emulator. I'll double check with you to make sure I have the right links. I'm pretty sure I already have it, but I have a PC CRT hooked up to my computer, and
nice.
I can't wait to like set it to the exact resolution of Rally, and then drop that emulator in at full screen and see if I can get it to look right. I think that'd be very cool.
Yeah, that would be sick. You could probably get that working well. With OBS, I when I recorded it in full screen, it like the OBS recording would have it like locked into a far upper left corner of the recording, even though on my monitor it looked like it was centered. So like that, I don't know if that'll interfere with your efforts to try to get that on the CRT monitor. But yeah, tell me how that goes. I'm curious. I hope
Yeah,
it works
because
well.
the arcade version of Sega Rally ran at an odd resolution, correct?
Yeah, and it on frame rate. Pretty much every Model 2 game ran it. I think it was 57.5 frames per second instead of a full 60, and I think that was due to just manufacturing costs of the CRTs they put in those machines.
And
They
it's
didn't
like
have ones that go full
512 by
60.
384 resolution or something like that, right?
Something like that. Yeah, yeah. I don't remember, but it's weird. It's it's a weird number.
So that's gonna be interesting. I wonder if that resolution is gonna be high enough to use on a PC CRT monitor, because it would be too high to run on your average RGB monitor, or certainly not a consumer CRT.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Hmm. And then the Saturn footage you had captured through the OSSC.
Yep. I got an OSSC. I think it was like right before the RetroTink 4X was like announced. I was like, oh dang it, I should have waited.
No, the
But
OSSC is still an
it's still
absolutely
good.
awesome piece of
It's a
equipment.
dream. Yes, it works. It works super well. I yeah, RGB SCART out of the Saturn um, into a PVM, the output RGB signal from the PVM into an OSSC into the capture solution from there. So
That's
that was,
perfect.
yeah,
And
and
do
that's what I
you
used for Virtua Cop, which allowed me to use the light gun and also have the RGB capture on our OD hardware.
right, right, right. And for that setup, do you use generic settings for the OSSC, or do you have optimal sampling styled in? Because that's going to be really hard with Saturn to do optimal sampling.
Yeah, it's just regular old. I didn't do anything crazy with the OSSC settings to capture it. Um,
I
and
mean, also
sometimes,
just a quick aside here. The
yeah,
point of your videos is a review and a documentary about the history. You don't do super deep dive analysis of video. You don't need uncompressed 4K zoom in 1,000
exactly,
times. Like,
yeah,
that's not what you're
yeah.
doing. That's not the purpose of what you're doing. But I still always ask the questions because we have a ton of our fellow nerds listening that are also curious. So,
Gotcha. Yeah, I'm not doing anything crazy with the OSSC settings. Just trying to make it look good, but also not like so unrealistically good that there's no way this is how good it looked back in 1995, right? But certainly not going to do like you know a FireWire capture card with composite video cabling or anything
right,
like
right.
that. So
I my only strong opinion on that is there are some people that prefer to do composite captures, and
there are, and that if that's the look you're going for,
that's
it'll
fine.
look nostalgic. Yeah.
As long as the aspect
So
ratio is correct. The
yeah, just
only
don't
thing that
stretch it.
bothers me is when they stretch it all the way to 16 by 9 in a documentary style of, here's how this game looked. No, it didn't. But also when like NES games that are, or any games 256 pixels that are really narrow, that's not how those games looked either. So
Yeah,
the aspect ratio is the only thing that bugs me. I don't nitpick about. I mean, unless it's a deep dive analysis video where they're talking about, look at this port isn't as good because no, it's not as good because of your capture settings,
yeah,
not because of the
exactly.
game. But
Right.
other than those scenarios, the only thing that ever bugs me is aspect ratio. So you don't make that mistake in yours.
this happened to me when watching someone else's video. I won't name drop the game or content creator because the video is very good. Had interviews and everything, and I learned a lot about this particular fifth gen video game that I really really like. But the person who put it together, all of the game capture was 16 by 9 stretched emulation in 1080.
Mm.
And I was like, oh my god! And it wasn't. I don't think it was 16 by 9 stretch. I think it was 16 by 9, like where the emulator attempts to load in polygons into the bar left and right letterbox bars, and you see a lot of pop out because it's not. The game doesn't think to load stuff there, and the UI was all weird looking. And I was just like, oh no, dude, don't do
Yeah,
that. If you're gonna emulate it, at least make it look, in 4x3, not with the crazy enhancements or anything like that that make it look more dumpy. But
yeah.
yeah, it's not, stuff like that irks me too. I don't like that.
So the PlayStation 2 captures, those looked like 480i captures, right?
Yeah, so the capture card I have doesn't work with OSSC's 4X, so that was Bob 480 and 2X, unfortunately. So you can
But
see
doesn't
it
the
dribble.
PlayStation 2 version of the game support native 480p output?
I To be honest, I don't remember. It's been too long since I recorded that. Um,
Fair enough.
yeah, at the time, I distinctly remember not being able to do anything about the Bob unless I blew a few $100 on a new capture card, which at the time I did not want to do. Um, yeah, I'd have to go in and check. I don't remember for sure. It's been because I recorded a lot of the footage, the gameplay footage, like more than a year ago. So
Because
I
I gotta
don't
say,
quite remember.
once again, in the context of this video, you're presenting the PlayStation 2 version, as if somebody would have seen it back then. So while Bob deinterlacing on an OSSC on a flat panel isn't what people would have seen in the PlayStation 2 version when it was new, it was the interlaced look. It was that
Right.
same 480. Not the same as Bob deinterlacing, but it was an interlaced look to it. So I absolutely would not call that a mistake. But when I saw that, that's when I was like, we got to get Nick a RetroTink 4K
You
because
know
you
what
could have
was
gotten some HD Retrovision component video cables and you could have still run it. Which PVM do you have again?
This is a I don't remember the model number. It's a Sony Trinitron, the
But
14
it's
inch.
not the 480p compatible one, right?
It's 14M4U. I'm pretty sure if I remember correct.
M4U. All right. So then it's an excellent one, by the way. But then at that
Yes.
point, you would have actually gone and just played this on a flat panel, but you would have set the PS2 to 480p and you'd have let the Tink 4K just take everything to whatever your target resolution was. And
Right.
then you would not have to worry. And same thing with all of the 240p stuff. You would have the same setup of running it into your PVM and then, or even 480i, but into the PVM and into the Tink, but then you just let it do. You either would have let it do its sampling, which its generic mode is far more advanced than the OSSCs, because of course it is, right? It's so much more
Yeah.
expensive and it's so many years later. It's not a shot at Marcus. It's just that of course it is.
Exactly. It's just that's how things develop over time.
Right. Or
OSSC
you
is
could have
great, but
actually
yeah.
gotten pretty crazy and gotten any of the profiles done. So you could have done something like the perfect aspect ratio. And that's one of those things where I would love to have you try it and get your opinion, because maybe that would be too good for what the representation that you were trying to get, or maybe you look at it and go, this is so good, I got to use it this way. So we got to get
Right.
Nick a
No,
retro thing 4K. We got to start a GoFundMe or something.
no, I've already got a Patreon.
Yes. Yeah.
But I
All
wouldn't
right.
say no to that.
Everybody listening, go sign up for Nick's Patreon, and so we can get him a Tink 4K. And what computer do you use for this?
So I've just got a. It's like technically it's an HP, but it's got so many like
But it's
things
a
that are out
PC and
now
not
that
a
weren't
laptop.
then. It's a PC desktop, yeah.
All right, then we also got to get you a AverMedia Live Gamer 4K, and then you're set. You don't have to capture in 4K. I just, from the features and functionality point of view, that's the combo that you need to get.
Is
So
that the one that you just jam into the PCI slot and it's just like a part of your computer?
yes, and
Yeah,
it's got HDMI in and HDMI out. The out is lagless, so with
that's
your
saucy.
yeah, so if you just have a second monitor you could plug it into, you could be gaming with no lag added, and capturing at the same time, and it
Nice.
handles the Tink 4K perfectly. So that's
Right on.
That's the combo that you need. And when I say you need, I mean your videos are already awesome, but we
Thanks.
want to jack these up to the next level. So let's all jump on the Patreon. I've been a supporter here since I first discovered your work. So it's my
Hell yeah, I appreciate
my
it.
crappy minimum minimum donation. That's all I can do. But
It goes a long way, man. It goes a long way. All of it helps. So
yeah,
it's all
if
good.
everybody who loved this documentary as much as I did threw down, you'd be able to pick up one of these in the next batch. So,
Right, right.
um, so what else? What other behind the scenes stuff about this documentary stands out that that you'd like to talk about? Because every time I do a video that consumes months of my life, there's so much I want to talk about that I just assume nobody wants to hear. But
Right,
this is the
exactly.
format. If people are listening to this, they want to hear. So
The rally footage from back then was a lot of fun to go through. Um,
yeah, where'd you
W
even get that?
So mainly, there's a YouTube channel called VHS Rallies. They no longer do stuff now, but they spent a lot of years, I guess, just buying up VHS tapes of rally broadcasts and digitally preserving them, posting them online for anyone to like look at and use or whatever. There's a lot of other YouTubers and other just random people who have uploaded tapes of rally broadcasts too. But so many of them are out there. And so often during editing, I'd be going through, like, say, a broadcast of a specific rally, trying to find footage of like Fujimoto driving through. And I'll just catch myself sitting there just watching it. And like a half hour goes by, and I'm like, oh, yeah, I was editing video. What am I doing? Right. They're just so much fun. Right. They're so good. They're so good. The energy they had back then was different, very different from today. So
Is that
um,
YouTube channel still up?
it's still up. Yeah, VHS Rallies is still up. So that person uploaded a ton of old rally broadcasts. The website for that, I don't remember the exact name of the website. It'll probably just pop up if I start typing it in here. Um, there's a website that tracks World Rally Championship data, kind of like IMDb, but for rally racing.
Mm,
Here it is. So it's ewrc-results.com. And that tracks every professional rally driver that they're able to track, what
wow.
races they competed in, what position they got, and more importantly, the number of the car they were driving and what kind of car it is. So, say I needed to go through footage of the 1995 Indonesia rally, and I needed to find whatever car Fujimoto was driving. It would tell me on his WRC data page that at that rally he was driving a Toyota Celica Turbo ST185 with the number 6 on it. Big, bold number 6 on the side of the vehicle. So if I see a car in that rally broadcast with a 6 on it, then that's Fujimoto. Um, then I know that that's one I can use for him. So I'd be going through like these, several hours of rally tapes trying to find whatever car he was driving. And then anytime I'd find it, I'd be like, bam, hell yeah. And then even better if it had like Sega Rally stickers on it, if it was one of the ones where they had the rally stickers. I was like, sick. It's got the Sega livery on it. Let's go, right?
That is awesome. I bet
And
you
I,
too, if you brought that up during the interview, he probably remembered every car from every race that he was driving.
yeah, yeah, he does. I showed him a few of the tapes that I found with him, like from back then, and he was real happy to see that.
Oh,
Um,
that's so cool.
yeah, yeah. So sometimes they'll interview the drivers, sometimes they interview Fujimoto. Um, what was great is anytime something significant happened during a race, like chances are it would be seen in that broadcast. So like Fujimoto talked about crashing in the 1994 Safari Rally. Well, all the rally tapes like had footage of his car being all donked up and the co-driver being, gingerly walked to an ambulance to be treated for his injuries, and
Mm.
that kind of fixing up the car, and Fujimoto being like, "Oh, dang it, we lost this time. That sucks, right?" Like these tapes just had all of that. So the process of finding all that and weaving it together to kind of build his story on the timeline was a ton of fun. I had a lot of fun finding that and going through that.
That
Um,
must have taken forever.
I don't, yeah. Tim Rogers of Action Button fame once said that content creators need to log the hours they spend working on stuff, and I have not done that. I've never done that. I probably should though, because yeah, it probably took a lot, a lot of time, an
Yeah.
inordinate amount of hours.
I
So
always keep like a rough estimate of what things took, and no one would no one who hasn't done this would believe how long it takes. I guess that's
it's
the
yeah,
best way to put it.
I believe you, Bob.
I know you do. Holy crap, I know you do.
Right? Yeah, yeah. This stuff takes time for sure.
Huh. Well, this was so cool just kinda hearing, hearing how this came together, and I was so impressed at both of these I mean, I like all of your work, but
Thank
just
you.
it's hard to not have the 4 hour and 40-minute Sega Rally documentary and a 4 hour and 25-minute Virtua Cop documentary stand out. I mean, the bug one was great, Quarterback Attack, I loved that one, but still, these are epic.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. The one I'm working on next is for High Velocity Mountain Racing Challenge, which was
Okay.
the United States localization of Tolga King, a drift racing game from Cave of all developers. The Schmuck people made a drift racing game in the 90s. So
I've never played that one.
it's good? Question mark. Um, Long story short, with at least the first Toga King, you need the racing wheel controller to get the most out of it. But when you do, it becomes a blast. So it's odd. There's a lot of weird quirks to it, but it's also good. So yeah,
Hmm.
we'll talk more about that later, I
That was the
guess.
other thing that stood out was when you showed the racing wheel. I remember buying that, being so excited when I first started RetroRGB, thinking like, "Oh, I love weird accessories. I love, I love trying to interface with games different ways."
Yes,
I
same.
sat down. I could not find a comfortable position, and when I managed to awkwardly set it on my lap, it sucked for Daytona, it sucked for Rally, and it
Yeah,
was
it's not good for rally.
absolutely perfect for Outrun. And
Right.
I
Yeah.
just could not believe it. I was like, I don't even think we got Outrun in the States. Wasn't that just a Japanese version only? So
The standalone Outrun port was Japan only, but if I remember correct, I'm pretty sure it came to the West as part of the Sega Ages pack. It was one of the
oh,
like,
you're right.
I think
You're
it came
right.
with like that, and I want to say Space Harrier and Hang On and Afterburner. I think were the others, but I might be misremembering some of that.
Yeah, you
Um,
are correct about that. But I think I had the Japanese version, and I ended up selling it because I was like, I love Outrun, but someday I'll own a real Outrun machine. I
oh
did.
hell yeah! Call me up when you do.
I had it. I bought it right before the world shut down, and then
Oh,
it sat in my
nice,
friend's garage until I moved, and then I had it here for like 6 months, and then maybe a year, and then I had to sell it. So I did actually own an Outrun machine, and the only
nice.
time I have ever beaten the arcade version of the game was the very last time I ever played it on stream, and my mic was dying, and it was beeping like low battery, and it had been beeping for like 10 minutes, and I was like, all right, this is the last run. We got to just do it. If I don't beat it, I'll just say I never beat the game. And I beat it. And right as I was screaming like an idiot child, the mic died. So it was perfect. It was
Nice.
like the
That's pretty exciting.
absolute perfect ending. So yeah, but a dream come true. I'm glad it went to a good home as well. So
Hell yeah, that's good. Was it the standing room only cab, or did it have a seat for you to sit down in?
standing room only. I don't have the
All
room for
right,
something like that.
right,
I
yeah,
would love nothing more than to have sit down Daytona, sit down Outrun, sit down Afterburner, but I also don't have a house big enough to do that, or
exactly.
$20,000 to have those brought in, refurbished, and yeah. So
There's the cost of getting them at all. There's the physical space they take up, the amount of electricity they use, and then the sheer maintenance, like
yeah,
recapping and finding weird parts and trying to figure out how to replace them with like no guides online for any of that stuff. Like I don't know how people are able to maintain some of that. It's bonkers.
I'd basically have to have Cruz and Jason from Dell's Arcade come up and live at my house every weekend for a year if I wanted all of those things to be in
Right.
perfectly functional condition.
Just
So
give them room and board and say, all right, just fix it. I'll feed you. Just fix it. Right.
yeah.
No,
What
that's
do
good.
you mentioned that you were doing another one after that racing game, right?
Yeah, yeah, double switch. So I reviewed them in release date order for those who don't know. So High Velocity is next, and then the one after that is Double Switch, which is the last digital pictures game to come out, the last FMV masterpiece from Digital Pictures to be
I
released
cannot
before they
wait
went
to watch
bankrupt.
that documentary. To this day, I don't know how to play that game. I remember
That
renting
yeah.
it as a kid and getting so excited, like, "Oh, it's gonna be like Night Trap," and I'm like, "What the hell is going on right now?"
I mean, I guess it's kind of like Night Trap. It's Night Trap on like some kind of form of bath salts or something. I guess it's
Yeah,
odd.
that's the perfect analogy. Night Trap
Yeah,
on bath salts.
yeah. That video will be fun. I've already conducted interviews for it. There's a bunch of behind the scenes stuff out there that exists, and that there will be more stuff on what happened to digital pictures and what caused their demise that not a ton of people know about in that video. So that one goes pretty. It'll be a fun episode. I'm excited for it to come out.
Oh,
So
I'm excited for both. Thank you so much for the work that you do. I'm sorry I didn't do as good of a job as I wanted promoting the Virtua Cop documentary, but I'm going to try
no,
real
you're
hard for
fine.
this
You're
one.
good.
And
Yeah.
I
Don't
just,
apologize for anything. I'm glad you talked to me. So
well, your work deserves more views on it. So
thank
I'll
you.
reach out to a few friends and see if we can figure out different ways to promote you because it's just, I mean, your work speaks for itself. If it wasn't good, we wouldn't be talking to you. No one would be paying attention to you. If it was a 4 hour
So
and 40-minute documentary that had a bunch of gameplay footage and some bad, some bad script writing. No one would care. It's the
right, yeah,
opposite.
it could just be rambling for 4 hours, right?
Right. You worked your butt off, and holy crap, what an absolutely awesome documentary. So thank
Well,
you
thank
so
you.
much
Right,
for your work.
absolutely. I appreciate hearing it.
I think we just got to end. The only thing that I could possibly think of to end on is something that's going to upset many people, but I'm just going to go out and say it anyway. Ridge Racer has one track.
It's just got one track in it. There's only one track in Ridge Racer.
One track.
For those unaware, one track.
One.
It's got, parts of the track that extend on certain other modes, but it's still one track. Just one.
Just one.